have a way to kind of understand. What we can't understand is you're deserting us.
Yes, the sign-in sheet up front to get into the radio station, the name above me was me. So, from Friday.
No, it's some big news for you.
Yes.
And as a young man with 5 children, and congratulations once again. That's wonderful to have that big a family. And maybe you're not even done yet. But
I'm done. I'm done.
Did you get the surgery?
No, not yet. Not
Okay.
soon, hopefully.
Okay. Well, talk to me before you get it, okay? I got some reality I want to give to you. But there you have a big announcement to make.
I do. And this was kind of a rush this afternoon to get things out because you guys apparently have a wonderful news director here.
Oh, we do. Brooke, I'll tell you, we lost it there for a little bit when we lost Rob. Rob was great.
Yep.
But Brooke is university educated and she's a Fort Dodge girl, which gives her kind of a real edge up on it.
Yes. So yeah, Brooke texted me. The news is that I got word on Friday that I was selected to be the next Humboldt County Magistrate judge.
How do you like that?
That's a part-time position, so I can still keep my private practice. But the flip side of that is I cannot be a judge and an elected official. And so as a result, I actually just came from City Hall. I gave David my resignation notice effective on the 11th. So I wouldn't start as magistrate until the 23rd. But if my reading's correct, the way it goes, to my knowledge, don't hold me to this, leave it to David and Mark to figure out, is I think the council selects a 7-member commission who then holds a public hearing, seeks if anybody's interested in filling out the remainder of my term, which would be about a year. And then they submit not more than 5, not less than, I think, 3 names, unless you only have one person that puts their name in the ring, then they can only give 1. People that are interested, at which point the council would then vote of those names as to who would fill the remainder of the term.
The council would vote.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So
that's in the city charter.
That's in the city charter.
Yep.
That's fine.
So I had to double check that.
So you don't have any problem with me asking for consideration, do you?
By all means. By all means.
Because you aren't a large council person. All right.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if I have that many friends on the council, but I'll tell you.
That would be interesting.
That would be great. I should really wait and run next time around, as a non-fun hater candidate. I love fun. And the council, as it stands now, are fun haters. The mayor's even a little bit of a fun hater, even though when he's out, he seems like he's a fun lover. I've seen him around. He gets on that, gets behind the table there at Amigos, and he stays a while.
It used to be me.
It used to be you?
5 kids does not allow that to
5
happen
kids
anymore.
does not allow that. Well, this makes perfect sense for a family, man. I guess you get state benefits, that sort of thing.
I think that comes with
job
it.
Security.
And I think the nice part is I guess I haven't ever really had the desire to be a judge.
Really?
I knew that this was coming up. I enjoy private practice. I like the relationships that I built with clients over the past decade and hopefully many more decades. And the current Humboldt County Magistrate, Greg Stobie, has mandatory retirement that comes up on the 22nd of this month.
That's right, Stobie.
Yep. And so I
What's
thought
your
about it.
mandatory retirement age?
That's 72.
72. Okay.
Yep. And so I
He's
thought
that
about
old,
it
really. Wow.
over the summer and thought, this is a way to maintain private practice, which is what I enjoy doing, while also kind of continuing in that public sector area, or kind of not public sector, but I don't know. I can't think of my words right now.
That's okay. But, I thought all you young attorneys wanted to be judges someday, unless you're a bazillionaire like the other Neven.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm nowhere close to bazillionaire status.
Well, again, this must be a great sense of security. I mean, just from a practical standpoint, I understand there's other career considerations, and this is something that you had to discuss with your wife and probably other members of your family who wanted to weigh in, whether you wanted them to or not.
I think it'll be good. It allows me public service. That's what I was looking for.
Public service,
to continue in that realm of public service, which is what my parents, taught all of us kids, and that's why You've seen me on council for 7 years. Is that commitment to the public? And
Have you been on the council 7 years?
Yeah, shocking.
Wow.
Almost a quarter of my life. I have been.
How old are you now?
30, 33, I think.
You're just a young guy yet. Yeah. Well, that's cool.
So, yeah, I was just over talking to David, and, I've been very lucky to sit at that table with some truly great people up there, whether or not they're fun haters or not.
All right, Bemrick. Okay, go from there.
And, to be elected in 15 and 19 was humbling both times. Even I remember the first race against Clarice, very good opponent.
Yeah,
very good roots in the community. That was a fun campaign to be had. Was very lucky and humbled to be elected at that time, and just the fact that the public would put trust in you. I mean, it's a lot when you think about it, and kind of absorbing all of that in there, and to have that trust over the last 7 years. And I did quick calculations of what we've done in the past 7 years. It's almost $100 million in infrastructure, water, sewer.
In 7 years, you've been on
streets. In just those 7 years, almost $100 million. Yes.
Wow.
And so there was a long time, from in the 1980s, very rough period for Fort Dodge, but there was a while there where we just weren't quite spending on infrastructure like we needed to be. And honestly, I don't blame those elected officials at that time, because after the loss of those plants, the future of Fort Dodge, I think, was very much in question.
You're talking about the packing plants?
Yes.
Oh, we went down the tubes fast, bro.
And so why would you spend a whole bunch of money when you're wondering what the future of the town looks like? In early 2000s, we made a collective decision as a community to really invest in ourselves. You saw that to the switch to a manager form of government. Terry Lutz, Matt Bemrick, kind of that new crop of leadership that came in, and I think we've really seen the benefit. Now, people are going to still say there's bad streets out there, which there are.
Oh, lots.
But we are investing. We are putting a bunch into getting to where we need to be, and to see the progress that we've had before my time, through my time, and where we look to be in the future is exciting for the city.
Well, you were elected at a time when we wanted to break away from city officials who weren't interested in doing anything with our town. I mean, even through the 1990s, frankly, there were a group of people who were, well, the packing plants are gone, so let's just let the town die a slow death. We'll take as much money out of it as we can. But other than that, Fort Dodge is done. And I'll tell you, during the 1980s, I know this was before your time, but we lost a huge amount of advertising clients.
Yeah.
I mean, seed corn companies, chemical companies, all those things were big advertisers. They went down the tubes or absorbed by bigger companies.
Yeah.
And a lot of people left the States, including me. I left Fort Dodge in 1986 for a better job, I thought, in North Carolina. And it did pay me a lot more. And I was treated well in North Carolina, but I'm definitely not a Southerner.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come home. So here I am.
Yeah. But I remember, I was still in school. I remember going down to the public library for that live webcast for the greatest, I don't remember, the greatest cities, 100 greatest cities in America. And we had the lights are on in Fort Dodge, and everybody wore yellow, and we did that live broadcast to the committee.
Yeah.
And I view that as one of the main kind of collective turning points for the city of deciding, hey, we're not going to mope about it anymore. We're gonna do this.
Yeah, and there was a lot of pushback. Really, there was. So I'm whoever's next, and I think it should be me. But whoever's next, I hope we still have that forward thinking, that forward idea going on.
Yeah. Well, we've got, our current elected officials, city, county, schools, even private sector out there too. The partnerships we've built up, and not to mention city staff, David, the department heads, the entire city, is just tremendous workers that we have on our behalf as citizens. And the reality of it is we sit at the table, and they're the ones doing the day-to-day work and making a lot of this move forward. And so you got to give credit to to city staff. They do a tremendous job.
Well, I think the city staff is pretty good. Yeah. Vicky over there rules absolutely. Fear thinks he has the power, but he doesn't. He doesn't. But yeah, oddly, the man who argued long and hard and early for a city manager form of government was Will Patterson, who became mayor, of course. He always wanted the mayor of Fort Dodge to be a figurehead. And he was running for mayor. I think his opponent was Myron Grote the first time he was elected. And his whole thing was we should make the mayor's position ceremonial, cut ribbons with the Chamber of Commerce, that sort of thing. And he'd take a $5,000 salary. Well, he was the only one willing to take a $5,000 salary. But, Sharon Hickey, she was never the city manager, but she might as well be. I forget what her title was at the time. And then we hired Ferrick, which turned out to be a great move. Yeah. A great move.
Definitely.
But yeah, it's odd how the city works and the personalities get involved. I wouldn't associate you with Willie necessarily, and I'm not taking. I liked Willie. I was one of the pillars. I understood Willie. I was closer to his generation.
Yep.
And that stick your chin out and take a shot if you want, sucker.
Yeah.
He was an old Fort Dodge guy. See what happens to you after you take your shot. But no, those were. There was some rough history going on when those packages passed. I think Jim Janford was mayor. If you know anything, I realize this was before your time, but I think it was Clydenup when I first got here. Then it was Janford, and a radio guy ran for the position of mayor. Said he went to school at the University of Michigan. They didn't know who the hell he was. So Mike McCarville was elected for several years. The emphasis was just on maintaining, and managing the decline.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they do in newspaper and radio because we're old media, but I don't want to get off on that.
Well, are you sure?
Yeah. Well, in the next segment, I will. When you're gone, when you've been released from the purgatory that you're in right now, I will. I'll expound on that a little bit later. But what really moved you as far as your decision?
With anytime you have a vacancy in a judicial office, they tend to be few and far between. In this one, I didn't think that anybody that lived in Humboldt County was interested. They didn't express any interest, at least immediately. And so I thought about it. And honestly, it was now Court of Appeals Judge Paul Allers from Fort Dodge.
Yeah. When
he got sworn in, I remember if there was a bit of language that he included was that those who can be good judges should not continue to sit on the bench. And I don't think I'm amazing by any means.
Say that again. Those who
would be good judges should not continue to sit on the bench, like bench as in like sporting bench versus
in the dugout.
That was poor choice of words.
Yeah.
Two different benches. And so, like I said, I just don't have a desire to be like a district court judge or anything like that. So this was an opportunity to continue my private practice and serve in a capacity that I think and hope that I'll be good at. So.
Oh, I'm sure you'll be good at it. In other words, you have to move to Humboldt County.
No, you can live in a continuous county around Humboldt County. So Webster qualifies.
Continuous or contiguous?
Contiguous.
Which one of us went to school for so long?
I don't know. This is it's Monday and my brain's already fried for the week.
No, that's all right. A good vocabulary is the only thing I really got one going for me.
Yes. So
otherwise, I'm not capable of critical thinking.
So yep, it still works, and our current home's getting a little bit small for the 5 kids.
The tribe, huh?
So we've been looking for a couple years, but just being picky as to where we want to be at. So,
boy, news travels fast. One of your family members was on StreamYard right away.
Yep, that sounds about right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Again, if you'd like to check out the studio and see as well as hear what happens in the studio, it's on my Facebook page at Michael Devine or AM 1400 KVFD, the radio station Facebook page. We're talking with City Council person Neven Conrad, who's made an exciting decision in his personal life, and he is leaving the council to become a magistrate in Humboldt County. So your wife's behind this decision all the way. You
Yes, I can't do anything without,
well,
without
no,
her blessing.
no married couple can. I mean, there's my dad used to say, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Yep.
You go making a decision like this, and mama ain't gonna be happy, by yourself.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, honey, I'm quitting the council,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be a magistrate. Just thought you'd like to know.
I'm sure,
Is that the way it works?
I'm sure she will greatly miss our conversations on fireworks and urban deer hunts and those sorts of matters in there.
Well, maybe we should address what a magistrate does.
Yes.
What will be your
So
duties?
a magistrate basically is so if you were to get arrested, the first time you see a judge is at an
Me?
initial appearance. So magistrate handles initial appearances. They handle some small claims, less than $6,500 in value claimed. Simple misdemeanors, if that's it alone, anything above a simple misdemeanor goes up to usually either a district associate judge or district court judge, whoever may be handling it. Evictions, mental health committals, substance abuse committals, those all go in front of a magistrate as well too. So that's a little sampling of what's all in there. So every one of those areas is areas that I am familiar with. I've practiced in them. To be honest, the mental health is going to be challenging just because beds are limited. Options available are limited as well too. And so you kind of get in the predicament of, if you have an influx of people in serious need of mental health help, then your kind of hands are tied by the resources available within the state. So I'm eager and happy to approach that, but I cognitively know that there are going to be challenges that present themselves, including mental health.
Yes, mental health. So is a magistrate allowed to hear a felony case, for example?
No
Okay.
felony cases. Those all go to either district associate judges or district court judges.
Okay.
So it'd be simple misdemeanors, simple assaults.
You did say that, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. Possession of drug paraphernalia is a simple misdemeanor. Possession of a controlled substance is a serious misdemeanor. So that would not be in front of a magistrate, but just kind of those lower level offenses in there.
Okay. So no divorces, nothing like that.
Nope.
Thank God you wouldn't want to be involved in a divorce anyway.
I don't do any family law in my private
No.
practice anyway.
My son's been getting divorced for almost 2 years, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, COVID played a
Yeah.
part in that, but divorces are just murder.
Long, expensive process
Oh, God.
where at the end of the day, no one is going to be happy.
No, really, that is the case. I've seen a lot of people get divorced over the many years. I got divorced once. As far as that goes, I remarried that same girl. But anyway, yeah, it's just a long experience. Nobody's really happy.
No.
Not really.
Nope.
I mean, one person maybe, I don't know, have some says. I just don't think there's much good to divorce unless there's
No, because a good divorce is when everyone loses something. And so how can you be happy when you lose something? And you can have people come in and say, we've completely agreed this is how it's going to be. And then it becomes, well, I'd really like the lazy boy. Well, if you want the lazy boy, then I get the dog. Well, if you get the dog, then I get, and then everything just unravels.
Oh, the worst is when kids are involved.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just murder.
Yep.
It's just murder and unhappiness and
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're not going to do that for your sake.
Yeah. Not me.
Do you face retention elections or
Yeah. So
as a magistrate?
oh gosh, I should know this off the top of my head, but again, not firing on all cylinders today. So I would continue out Magistrate Stobie's current term. I forget when that ends up.
Oh, he got retired then. When he turned
midterm.
72.
Yeah,
Bang,
on that day.
was
Yeah,
it,
you
huh?
cannot go past it.
Oh, okay.
And so I'll finish out his term, and then it would be subject to the magistrate appointing commission taking candidates again at that point in time, which could be me, could be other people if they decide to throw their name in as well, and going through kind of the same process we went through again.
Sure.
So,
wow. So were you explain did you knew this position was opening, so you applied like
Yes.
other people?
Yep. So
You weren't approached.
No, the clerk's office sends out notice of vacancies. I had talked to a whole bunch of people just to get their insights, and and thought, I called people that I thought if I was doing something dumb, they would certainly tell me. So that just in case I was, and they were all supportive of it. Thought it was a good idea. So I put my application in. That closed on the 15th. We had our interviews Friday morning, and I was called on Friday to let me know that I had been selected.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So who makes the decision?
That Magistrate Appointing Commission.
I'm sorry, you said that earlier.
Yep.
Magistrate.
So
Appointing.
it's a judge, and then usually they're made up of 2 attorneys, 2 lay people. It depends on the county. This one we had 1 attorney, 2 lay people, and a judge.
Okay.
So did the interviews and must have gone well, I guess.
Did other people apply?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So
do you have to have a law degree to be a magistrate? You didn't used to.
You didn't used to. And so I don't know if there's anybody still there, but if you were appointed as a magistrate prior to the law changing that now you do have to be an attorney, you can continue to apply and serve if you were before that cutoff date. But anymore, a new hire has to be an attorney.
Years ago, in my troubled youth, I used to go to I used to go to a seedy bar and hang out with seedy characters. So I did have to appear before a magistrate. And who was in there as magistrate? Well, some of the judge's pals appointed a magistrate who was a seedy friend of mine who hung out in seedy bars. And I thought, why am I over here and you're over there? I should be over there and you should be over here.
They used to have mayor's court as well too.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Bill Finn was the mayor. That was the first time I got in trouble. I had to appear before Bill Finn, mayor of Algona, Iowa, who will fine me $5 for being drunk or something. I don't know what it was. Some silly thing. But yeah, it was mayor's court. Yeah, the mayor would hear it.
Just get into a little fist fight, and then tomorrow morning you're going to go up in front of Mayor Matt Bemrick to decide your punishment.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. Me and a couple other guys were disturbing the peace by duking it out over by the fairgrounds years ago. And then we got mouthy with a cow. It was just one of those stories. We got mouthy with the police, and we all went down. Yeah. And away we go. I want to congratulate you, Neven.
Thank you.
I think the people that nominated you and appointed you have made the perfect decision. Man your age, with your background, especially as a city councilman, you should have a real feel for how government works and how the courts work and all of those sorts of things. So I hope everybody in your family is happy, especially Nikki.
Nikki is not leaving.
No, I know.
It's the other Conrad that's leaving, because that's what I fear the next step's going to be.
Well, no.
Is people are going to say, "Oh, I thought I saw that she was done."
No,
not her. It's me.
No. I don't think anybody's mistaken you for Nikki. All right, Neven, I really want to thank you for showing up on a real short notice.
Thank you.
10-minute short notice, and
I happen to be downtown.
Well, I suppose I don't get to interview you anymore because you're kind of got this judge thing going on, and judges don't get interviewed.
Well, I can come back in on non-politics stuff.
Okay, well, we'll do.
Just don't bash judges now.
No, well, I kind of got used to doing that. It was my shtick for a while.
I appreciate it.
Neven, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We rejoice in your news, and we know you'll do a terrific job. And if any of us can help you, we'd be happy to do that.
I appreciate it.
All right, this is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Divine Intervention is online at your Fort Dodge
Yeah, it's creeping up on me. I'll tell you. Sam, I can't get in a ladder anymore. I don't like to admit that, but I might as well put it out there. I lose balance on a ladder, a simple step ladder, and that's
Well, I don't think
uncomfortable.
that's unusual. I think, in fact, I was talking to a couple here just 2 nights ago, and they were experiencing the same thing. That anytime they had to step up on anything, they started to have inner ear trouble, and it was really fascinating. And I think it's a physiological thing, and maybe it's just something that happens when you get old.
You know, Sam, I was in helicopters on several occasions overseas. I'd hang out
Right.
the cargo door, so to speak. you know, it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me at all. Of course, I did have.
Well, you know, when you're riding the door of a helicopter, you look down and you say, "Well, that's not that far." You know, if I fell out, it's not that far. Yeah, it's. I never sat in the door of anything except when I was strapped in, and we used to tour the city of Berlin with the Army. We'd get in a Huey, and they'd strap us in, and we'd go up and hang out the door and get a bird's eye view of the city of Berlin, and that was fascinating. That was back during the wall, so it was a real dichotomy between the East and the West.
Well, just before you came on, I was trying to talk about Oscar Griffin Jr., and he was a great newspaperman in the small town of Pecos, Texas, who exposed Billy Saul Estes. I don't know, you and I were kids when this story came out. This was in the early 1960s, but I'm sure you remember it. Well, I kind of got fumbled up here, and a friend of mine just texted me, "Are you having a stroke?" Well, it probably appeared that way. If you listen to the whole thing, yes, I think Mike's stroking out. Yes. Anyway, Sam Clovis has a long and distinguished career, starting with his graduation from the Air Force Academy and 25 years in the Air Force as a fighter pilot. And I like to kid him and say his years as a talk show host in Sioux City was the height of his career, but I know that's not the case.
Well, you know, for many, I think that my career reached a very low apex to begin with, and then so the radio talk show host and others gets crunched together, and it's not very much of a bump. But but I will tell you this, that when I was on the radio, that was one of the jobs where I had the most fun, and it was a job where I really felt it was something natural. I just enjoyed it immensely, and I had a ball doing it, and you know, and as you know, you build quite a listening base. People listen to you every day, and you really don't realize the reach you have until you get out in the community and you're standing in high D and you're talking to the checkout person, and they say, "I know that voice. You're the radio guy." And and then you say, "Well, yeah, I am on the radio, and I'm maybe not the radio guy, but yeah," she said, "I listen to you all the time," and I get that quite often, and I'm sure you do too. So
yeah, on occasion. Well, we have StreamYard now, so we do video, so people recognize you more since the video. But I have kind of a distinctive voice anyway. I have kind of I have what's called a theater voice. You can hear me clear across the room, which is always not good, which is really not. It is a blessing and a curse both, because I've embarrassed myself a couple of times, But yeah, it's one of those things. I a couple of times in life, I've been out on a live broadcast, or somebody discovers who I am. A nice looking woman, for example, once told me, said, "Boy, you certainly don't look as good as you sound." And well, neither do you.
Well, yeah, I've had that more than once. You said the voice certainly doesn't match the image here. So
no,
yeah.
Well, there, that goes both ways.
Yeah, it does.
There we had somebody here in Fort Dodge years ago. She had just the sweetest voice, but I'll tell you, She could have been a linebacker.
Yeah.
There was one exception. There was a woman on WOW country radio years ago when they first went to country radio. I forget what she called herself, but she had just a lovely voice, almost a sensual voice. And farmers all over the Midwest were falling in love with that girl. And if they had seen her, they'd have really fallen in love with her because she was just a beautiful Asian girl. She really was.
Yeah.
I mean, her ancestors were Asian. She loved country music. She was a Midwestern girl all the way, but she was just a beautiful girl.
Well, there are plenty of people out there in radio business that are handsome or attractive, depending on your mix. The other part of it is that we don't get paid for how we look; we get paid for what we say, and that's the I thank God for that. So it's I always felt like that was, I never made enough money to put gas in my truck, so I never really worried about the pay as much as I enjoyed the opportunity to be on the air and a chance to do what I thought was as much educational as it was informative. And I felt that was an important part of what I did.
Sam Clovis is our guest. I want to talk with you a little bit about what some would describe as book burning. Apparently, traditional people who are traditionalists in our society are akin to Nazis because we don't want explicit sexual acts shown to children in our public schools. We're book burners, and we're opposed to intelligence itself. That's a bizarre argument.
But that's also not true.
Oh, it's a lie. Yeah.
It's patently false. In fact, it shows a level of discernment. And I think that is part of the social contract that we have with each other, is that we have to show discernment from time to time. And what do we mean by that? Well, what we mean is that we are looking, we put individual liberty over the collective. We believe in the traditional nuclear family. We believe in the primacy of religion. We believe in the primacy of voluntary association. And all of those things lead us to a different set of social norms than the progressives or regressives, whatever you want to call them, have in our society. We believe in the idea that we are the ones that are best able to raise our children. We are the ones that should start and finish their education. We believe that the literature that is presented to our children in school ought to have educational merit and should not be part of grooming or propaganda. And I think that that's where we run into the great conflict with the progressives, is they believe that they're smarter than we are, and they want to flip society and create confusion so that we create an androgynous society and not a society based on classic and traditional roles that we have in life as men and women, and that there are only two genders and not 43 or whatever it is that we've come up with of late. I think that is the real argument that is at stake right now.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, the assumption made, and I take no pleasure in this. The assumption made by the teachers union in the state of Iowa is astonishing. They really believe that because they have an undergraduate degree in history or social studies or some damn thing, and I would take issue with them if they are really part of the intellectual class, if they have a degree in grammar or English or something. Don't bore me with your degree in English. That does not mean you are the moral guide of my children or grandchildren. No. But they argue just as vigorously that, well, we're a racist, patriarchal, anti-gay, anti-transgender, and all those things society, and the only way to remedy it is to seize our children. Now, I want to, and that's what they're doing. And I don't use these words lightly. These are powerful words, but they are accurate and true. The local paper, you will never hear anything like this in the local paper. They don't even report on these things. They just want you to think that they want you to believe in unicorns and rainbows and please buy our paper because we were so pleasant and community oriented. It's a lot of nonsense. They're avoiding the issue because they can't take
Right.
it. They can't take it.
Well, they can't defend it either. I think
they can't defend it.
That's the real issue, is they cannot defend it. If you ask the majority of parents or anyone, you just ask the majority of society whether or not they believe that we are a racist, homophobic, and society, they're going to say no, that we are not. And I think if you were to go, the reason that they fight so hard is because they cannot convince us any other way. And so they try to capture the children. And I think that and a lot of it comes down to the fact that our parents, many of our parents that we raised, by the way, many of the parents that are out there today are willing to abrogate their responsibilities to the schools for a lot of reasons. And I find that astounding, that as a parent you would give up the education of your children. What you want that school to do is to provide them the reading, the reading, the arithmetic, the math, the basics of life, and the skills that are necessary to get along in life. I don't think it's up to the school to sit there and propagandize or groom a child to examine alternative gender nuances at the first or second grade level. I think that is not only is it wrong, and not only do I think it's criminal, I think it is evil.
Yes, it is evil.
And
yes.
I just think that we have a bunch of sick, perverse people out there that really do. And I don't know what you would imagine would be their meetings would be like when you go in there and say, we have to advance it. How does that happen? How do the school boards not get involved in this? How do the administrators not look at what is best for the community or best for the children? That this is clearly an agenda. That is clearly an agenda that is being advanced. And how is it school boards and administrators don't see it and don't fight it? I don't get it.
Well, and you should hear some of the explanations. Nobody's ever given me one face to face, but probably because I'd react badly. I've got to get to the next school board meeting. I really do. From what I've heard, other educators in our state and perhaps here in Fort Dodge have said, well, the librarians want these books in our school. The librarians.
I don't believe that for a minute.
You know, what this is, and the school boards are a tool of the teachers union, period, and end of story. They serve the teachers union. And the teachers union has broken the bond of trust with the rest of us. We can no longer trust teachers. That's a terrible thing to say, but it's an accurate thing to say. It's a truthful thing to say. As long as they insist, and they do insist with all their authority they think they have and their power, that they have every right to teach our children that abnormal behavior, grossly abnormal behavior, depraved behavior is, of course, natural and normal.
Well,
because
they want to normalize aberrant behavior.
Yes.
And that is, nothing could be farther from the truth. And I think that aberrant behavior is that. It's aberrant behavior. Now, would you want your child to have the opportunity to be exposed to a pedophile? Because that's essentially what we're saying. That we're saying that it's okay for children to be exploited And I think that that's the logical conclusion that one can draw when you look at the progressive agenda, that they truly believe that it's okay. And that nothing could be, that is so damaging to individuals. Anyone that, if you take any case study of anyone who has been physically and sexually abused as a child, and see how they turn out in life, then it becomes very clear how damaging that whole type of activity and behavior can be. And I think that's essentially what the left is trying to do, is to lower those natural social barriers to the whole idea of what is moral and what is amoral, and the other part of that is immoral. And I think that we look at immoral and moral. They look at amoral because they have no moral compass at all, none. And I think that allows them to advance these agenda that are clear. When do they teach math now? When do they teach English? When do they teach history? Because all they're doing is indoctrinating our children into something that, frankly, it has nothing to do with math or English or history. And that's what we want. That's what they want our children to be involved in, when in fact what we want is we want them to learn math, English, and science and history.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I still don't get it.
Well, an insidious and evil ideology has, in the form of the Biden administration, frankly, because the Biden Department of Education is putting a lot of pressure on the State Department of Education to do these sorts of things, to normalize aberrant behavior. I mean, he's got one of his cabinet members who is a transgender female. I'm sorry, but this transgender female cabinet member looks like a dude to me. And then, of course,
he is a dude.
Yeah, he is a dude. That's right. Genetically, he's a dude, but nobody told him. Nobody has the courage, certainly, to tell him. But and then, of course, we have Mayor Pete. We have a disaster with our transportation problems and chain supply, chain. What am I trying? Supply chains. And Mayor Pete takes several weeks off because he's pregnant, or his wife is, or something.
How is that possible?
I don't. It's not possible. I don't know. He's a dude, and his wife. I don't know if he's the wife or he's the husband. I don't know, Sam.
No. Here's the deal: if they're two men, they're each a husband.
They're each a husband.
Women, if they're two women, it's each is a wife.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think that's the way I figured it out.
No, I thought Mayor Pete, or Secretary Pete, I thought he had he had a wife, or maybe he's the wife. Sam, I don't know. The world's changed, and I'm not willing to change with it because it's ridiculous.
Well, just listen to yourself. I mean, just think about what we just said. So we're sitting there thinking, well, okay, so what is the proper adjective here, or what is the proper noun? I mean, and so you sit there and say, well, really? Why are we even discussing this? So no, I mean, the issue is that we have to make this classification of wife or husband, and you and I are both so far out of it, we don't know. So, Mike, I'm proud of that. I'm proud I'm out of it that far. So.
No, I am too, because these are lies. The idea that this makes moral sense is a flat out and evil lie. Let's not forget Satan spoke in a very convincing voice, but Satan was telling a lie. And yes, I do believe in the spiritual power of evil. And I think this is a manifestation of it. Maybe that's getting a little bit too Catholic for my Protestant friends. I don't know.
No, I don't think you're far off. And I think you're absolutely spot on when it comes to the notion that Satan is involved here, because it is evil.
It is
That
evil.
he's evil, and I do believe in Satan, and I do believe that's true. So,
All right.
no, absolutely.
Sam Clovis is our guest. We're going to be back. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at jmike1400.
Okay, Sam Clovis will be back.
1400.
That's right. That's where we're at. AM 1400, KBFT, the voice of Fort Dodge. And our guest is Sam Clovis. And we're talking about, well, the war on intelligence itself, because any intelligent person should know that a man can get pregnant. And that's perfectly normal. You know, Sam, I've said this several times on here. I have gone to the dictionary and I looked up abnormal behavior or abnormal. Well, I found the definition of abnormal behavior. And the abnormal behavior really is any behavior that the majority doesn't practice. Now, you and I don't wear a dress, and we probably should to get hip. But I will say that I don't want everybody thinks I'm probably a big Fox News lover. I don't always watch Fox News. It's not my job. My job is to find out what everybody's saying. So I'm in pain when I have to watch Morning Joe with those people, or CNN, either one. But I did tune in to Fox News a little bit last night while I was surfing during the football game, and there was Jenner. Well, the former Bruce Jenner. What is Ms. Jenner's name? What is it?
Is it Kris Jenner?
Oh, no. Kris Jenner is his former wife or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It was a very confused family there for a while.
Yeah.
What is her name? But anyway,
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, he made the big transition. Of course, he won the ESPY Award for courage for appearing on nationwide television in an evening gown. Yes, we have redefined what courage is. It's no longer charging the machine gun nest. It's putting on a beautiful, form-fitting.
Is it Caitlyn?
Caitlyn, there you go. Caitlyn Jenner. That's who this is. Anyway, Caitlyn dresses, of course, as a woman and wants to be referred to as a woman, but she still dates men. I guess I'm too stupid. I guess I'm too stupid to understand that. That makes no sense to me at all. If you're a woman, what does this mean? I don't know what that means, but
yeah, but hasn't she had the reassignment surgery?
No, she's still walking around with the same stuff.
No,
Bruce had. And we're just apparently ignorant for not understanding how wonderful that is and courageous it is that he's made this decision to come out, and we're going to be totally.
So does she date women or men?
Well, if she dated women, I guess she'd be a lesbian in her mind, but I don't know.
Yeah.
She dates men. And again, she's still got the tools to be a man.
Yeah. But
so no matter how I describe her, I'm going to be in trouble with somebody. But
no question.
But I don't care about that, because folks are saying in defense of this sort of behavior is a lie.
Right.
It's not intelligence. It's not a sign of intelligence to say, oh, okay, you're a man and can give birth naturally. And to say, and I saw some woman, a professor of philosophy at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, dressed down, I think it was Ted Cruz, for suggesting that didn't make sense. When he asked, could a man get pregnant, she responded by saying, that's transphobic. And the question was transphobic. And they can get away with that stuff with most people, but they can't get away with it from me. Rob Reiner was on Bill Maher's show not long ago, and Bill Maher said, this is kind of disturbing. We have people breaking into Trump's mansion. We have a lot of really authoritarian and autocratic measures cracking down on a bunch of poor slobs who got caught up in the January 6th thing. And he asked Rob Reiner then if there was a concern about civil liberties. And Reiner said, no, because of Trump. The answer is always Trump. And I went, really? The answer is always Trump?
Yeah.
These people are insane. They walk around talking about how intelligent they are. It's just crazy. But what Bruce Jenner or Caitlyn Jenner was saying last night on Fox News, and this may surprise some of the really intelligent people out there, what Caitlyn Jenner was saying is that transgender athletes, a male to female transition, those people have no place in young women's locker rooms. Apparently, the lead story was that some young women had been, well, not willing to share the shower with a couple of transgender athletes, and they were heard complaining about it in a hallway of a small college out east.
Right.
They were kicked. They were kicked off the swim team.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes right to the heart of it, because there is, I'll just give you an example. I heard about a situation in a high school in Sioux City where a female teacher walks into the women's bathroom, and out of one.
Well, listen, by the way, you may comment, certainly, by calling 515-955-1400. That happens all the time with Sam for some reason. Or you can go to StreamYard and comment. Now, you'll find StreamYard on my Facebook page, personal page, Michael Devine, or the radio station Facebook page. That's AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I think someone has commented here and made reference to a blowhard. I believe this person is referring to me as a blowhard. So let me self-identify, Mr. Clovis. I'm a blowhard. I believe I've copped to it several times in the past. Whoops, I guess Sam isn't with us. Damn it. All right, here he comes. All right. Doggone it. This is a first-class operation we have going on here. All right. Is that you, Sam?
Yes. I think when you lean back in your chair and turn your mouth you turn your face to the north, I think that's when we disconnect.
That could be. So maybe I should just stare at myself in this screen here. Anyway.
Well, I think it's the NSA that I was about to tell a very interesting story, and they just said no, we don't want to hear that. So, but I heard it from a very reliable source about it. Female teacher goes into the women's bathroom in a high school in Sioux City, and out of one of the stalls walks a young man. And the girls were horrified, as was the teacher, that there was a young man who had been using the bathroom in the women's bathroom. And investigation revealed that this is a young man who identified himself as being a female, even though he was clearly a male.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the thing that the question that I asked was, I said, do the parents know that this is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Do the parents know? And if the parents know and they accept it, then I think that we have a problem, because I think the parents have the authority and the power to sit there and say no.
Yeah.
And if I were those girls that got kicked off of that swim team because some dude was in the locker room with them, I'd go to another college. That is just ridiculous. And the university president and the athletic director and all of them ought to be fired and sent out of their jobs, because they're not protecting the culture and nature of this country. They are abusing it, and they are attempting to mutate what is normal. And I think that is a crime. I think it's criminal. I truly believe it. I think that is a crime against society.
Well, we're anti-intelligence.
Well, I would defy anyone. I have a pretty high opinion of myself. I would defy anyone to sit there and try to match intelligence or IQ or anything, experience, background, anything with me. I would be willing to take that challenge anytime. So,
yeah.
and that's what I found when I was in Washington, D.C. we had a bunch of Ivy League people walking around thinking that they were all that in a bag of chips, and I wouldn't let them carry my briefcase. That's how bad they were. So I was just, I never thought for a minute that they were worthy of anything, and so, and I just wouldn't. I had very little respect for them, very little.
Well, because they're no, there's nothing to respect them for.
That's correct.
Why on earth would you respect them?
They don't have, they have nothing to offer. I mean, once they get past their talking points, they have no depth. And the reason is because they don't know anything. and it's because they've never done anything.
That's right. Oh, there's a lot of that. We've got so many activists who are well known for being activists, but if you look behind the curtain at who the Wizard of Oz really is, they've done nothing in life. Nothing in life, and they're not going to do anything in life either. There's so many scams out there around Black Lives Matter. At least you could say for the civil rights people, there is no comparison, none, between the civil rights movement that Dr. King led and Black Lives Matter. None. Zero. None.
There is, in fact, there again, you talk about not being able to carry Dr. King's briefcase or Ralph Abernathy or Julian Bond, and he was a radical. I mean,
for his time, he was.
Yeah, but he was still, I thought, a very courageous individual for what he did and what he stood for. That's the way I always felt about the civil rights movement. I may not have agreed all the time with everything, but the one thing that I admired the most was their courage, and because it took courage to step up and make the stances that they did, and they found a way to do it effectively, and they found a way to do it in a nonviolent manner, and they did it in a way that led all of us to a much better place in this country. And I just think about the difference between the civil rights movement of our youth and adolescence and early 20s and 30s and Black Lives Matter. And you can't put them on the same page. They're not even close to the equivalent. And I just think that where we've seen this massive knee-jerk reaction to Ferguson, Missouri, and the George, whatever his name was, up in Minnesota, I just think that those reaction to those things has been alarming and have counted for nothing, because what they've done is increased the divide in this country and not closed it. And I think that truly is what the current Black Lives Matter is about, is division. It's not about unity. It's about division.
Yeah, I want to self-identify again as blowhard. I call myself, a lot of times I'll describe myself as a radio talk show host, and that's true. But blowhard is really the job description. And I'm unapologetic, Sam.
and a damn fine one, I might add.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The local paper defended itself for being boring today, and because it's National Newspaper Week. Our local paper is notorious for really not giving us any news. They'll reprint press announcements from the police department, or they'll get a statement from the local growth alliance and print it verbatim and that sort of thing. But they don't report anything. Really, they don't. There's we had a bomb threat at our school. A short time ago, and the school didn't let anybody know for 2 days. 2 days. Then last Friday, we had a 13-year-old kid apparently go to school, tell one of his friends to stay in the bathroom because he was going to get a gun and shoot the place up. And what we got was a press release from the police department below the fold on the second page. Now, school shootings are one of the most frightening things that a parent can hear about.
Right.
I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine being a parent and being told that, oh yeah, the school's on lockdown, and the paper treated it as just another announcement from the police department. You know, no backup story, no continuing story, nothing. So clearly, we have a school district that's not giving us the skinny on their teaching on transgender people, or whether their library has books that show graphic sexual acts between very young children.
Right.
Of course, they're same-sex relationships. I mean, what fun would it be if they were heterosexual sex acts described? That would be no good. We have to talk about those poor people who apparently we have to honor somehow. I don't know, Sam. Maybe you can explain it to me. You're smarter than I am.
No, I've got to tell you, I was just one of my doctoral students was talking about a article that she was reviewing related to contraception and the lack of knowledge of 15 to 19-year-old individuals with contraception. And I wrote a note back to her and I said, so I guess abstinence is not part of the conversation. And I was just being just a tad bit snarky, but I followed that up with something a little bit more concrete and reinforcing over the fact that you wouldn't have to have knowledge of contraception if you had taught the morality of not engaging in sexual acts at that age, because the consequences of that changes a person's life forever. Out of wedlock pregnancy is probably one of the most devastating and debilitating issues in America that nobody wants to talk about.
Well,
nobody.
Some women still some sad young women still use it as a valid career choice. You know, the worst thing you can do if you don't have an education, you don't have any job skills, is think to yourself, I know I'll get pregnant and live off the state, because that's not much of a life, I'll tell you. You'll be trapped.
It is not.
You'll be trapped for the rest of your life.
Well, it is. It's a horrible thing, and it's just I just wish people would wise up to that.
Yeah, I hope so too. But as long as we make it profitable, I shouldn't say profitable. As long as anything is profitable, I should say. What am I trying to say, Sam? As long as there's an incentive. Yes.
The incentives are higher for getting pregnant than not being pregnant, then they'll get pregnant.
Yeah, you're right. It's happening still, and it's very sad.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, who suffers the most but the child? You know, mama sometimes gets pregnant real early and she still wants to party and brings home daddy after daddy, and maybe is an alcohol and drug abuser or both, or God knows, you know. Pretty soon grandma's raising the kid and grandma's 70, you know. Yeah, that's something you really want to do when you're 70 years old, is raise kids.
Yeah, that's my age, and no, I don't. But I'm not a grandma either. The last time I checked my plumbing, it was still what I was born with. So,
so you have no announcement.
I have no announcement. No.
Well, if you do decide to make the announcement, Sam, don't tell me.
I won't.
I don't want to hear it.
No, I won't.
All right. So, just real quickly, I know you're a Trump guy. I'm going to throw this out to you. I think his time has passed. I think it would be better for the conservative cause if he didn't run for president. But he's going to run. He's going to run.
He's going to run anyway. He's going to run anyway.
Are you happy about that?
Well, we'll see. I don't know. It depends on how he does it.
Well, he's just going to go what he usually does. I mean, he beat the Democrats last in 2016 with Twitter. I mean, he did.
Twitter, 9 people. That was it.
Yeah.
So,
And, you know,
I was one of them. Yeah.
So the Democrats are running around shutting him down and trying to arrest him and hitting him with multiple lawsuits. It's outrageous. It's
like whack-a-mole. They'll never get him.
Well, I hope so. I hope you're right. Sam Clovis has been our guest. Thank
We'll
you.
See him.
Yeah. All right.
Bye-bye.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice for Dodge. Joe Coleman is next. It's 4 o'clock.
It's everything digital on the Kim Commando Show every Saturday from 11 to 2 on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD, Fort Dodge.
anyway?
I am very well. How are you?
I am pretty damn good. Now, you wanted it as a topic today, and I appreciate you suggesting it, that there is a crusade against education and intelligence. Was I reading the text correctly?
I was just, you had a couple of suggestions, and I was just countering, with some thoughts, especially as we talk about religion, and as we talk about theology, and as we talk about philosophy, and as we talk about politics today. I thought, maybe it'd be interesting to talk about a general anti-intellectualism undercurrent that is in America and has been in America for 100 years.
Well, Ayn Rand, the great philosopher, conservative philosopher, her book, The Fountainhead, influenced me in life. I don't know if you've read any Ayn Rand or not. You certainly know who I'm talking about.
I do, and I think she's excellent. My Fountainhead is great. I like Atlas Shrugged, but we each to our own.
Each to our own. That's for sure. They essentially had the same message: the individual over the collective. And I'll tell the story. I was telling it last week on the air a couple of times. When I was in the service, a captain walked up to me, and he said, "Divine, you look like you may have a brain." And I thought to myself, "What makes you think that, Captain?" But he recommended. He gave me a copy of The Fountainhead. I said, "I want you to read this, and I want you to talk to me about it later." And I'd never read a book about it like that before. I had never read a philosophy. It turned out to be philosophy. The whole book was about a philosophy, and it kind of gave a moral and, more important, emotional argument for what Ayn Rand called objectivism, and again, the individual over the collective. Ayn Rand is not popular with liberals necessarily, but she had a great impact on me. And I think,
Mike, I think she had a great impact on a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, she, if you will, came at things from maybe we could almost say a secular humanism point of view rather than a theological point of view.
Oh, without a doubt. Rand did not believe in God at all. I saw some of her oral interviews years later, and her husband had died, for example. She might have been on Phil Donahue's show way back then. I don't know. But she told Phil Donahue, if I really believed in God and afterlife, I'd kill myself right now. I would kill myself immediately so I could be with my husband because I loved him so much, which was a great testimony to love, of course. But she did not believe in God. And she thought, oddly, she came to be who she was because of the Bolshevik Revolution. Her and her family back in Russia, she was a Russian Jew. The Bolsheviks just confiscated their property, their business, and everything, said this is state property now. And she just burned with resentment about that. She just absolutely hated it, and she was at war with communists. But like the communists, she thought that religion was the opiate of the people, that it kept them sedated, and it kept them hoping for the next life. Winston Churchill even said it's good that the lower classes think of heaven because they have very little chance of improving their standing here on earth. That was from Winston Churchill. I may not have that verbatim, but he said something like that. And even today, that's what Russian leaders think. But it was odd that Ayn Rand believed that. But anyway, back to the original point. She taught that everyone has a personal philosophy, even though a lot of people don't know they have a personal philosophy. It takes some thinking to come up with a personal philosophy, I think, an examination of who you are as a person, but it's well worth the examination.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, but we also can say that when you strip everything away and you look at a personal philosophy that many of us feel that we might have, even without thinking about it, it's driven by two things. It's driven by life experience and it's driven by emotion.
Yes.
And when you take those two things into consideration, I think all of us have a personal philosophy, even if it's as fundamental as getting enough food to get us to the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But this is a great segue into some of the things that I was thinking that we might enjoy talking about. Something as fundamental, which was the dawn, basically the dawn of awakening in America almost 100 years ago, and that was the GI Bill.
Ah.
And what it did to this country, and we're still feeling the effects of it today. And we see in that fundamental things. I mean, you can talk about forgiveness of student loans, and it has its genesis in the GI Bill and how we morphed into wanting everyone to get to college and wanting everyone to get an education. And there's some real, there are a lot of people who believe that there are some real dangers in that. And one of the dangers is that if you become educated and you desire to exercise that great muscle in our head, in many respects, you become a lot more difficult to govern. And
Yes.
and there's a lot of powers that be that don't want to have educated people.
Absolutely.
And we can look as recently as the last 6-7 years, where we've had people alleging that I really like stupid people, and I basically I want you to stay stupid. And
I love the poorly educated.
I don't need to put an author of that.
I don't. Not to me, you don't.
Most
No.
people don't. But when you look at the GI Bill, we have a really interesting thing happen. We're coming out of the Depression. We're coming out of the Roaring 20s. We're moving from an agricultural society to an industrialized society. A huge impetus to that, obviously, being the Second World War. And the government decides we're not going to do the same thing to the soldier coming out of the Second World War that we did out of the First World War. You remember they were going to get bonus, and we had marches on Washington, and we actually had General MacArthur putting it down, the bonus army, and driving them out of Washington.
Wow.
But we had about 5% of the country who could claim that they had some form of higher education.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Across our populace, 5% of the country. And all of a sudden, the GI Bill came along, and that 5% by the mid-50s was close to 40%. I mean, that was a sea change,
Yes.
Michael, a sea change. And consequently, what happened was we had people saying, we need a higher wage. We need better jobs. We need to have plans for the future. The government can't operate from day to day. We have to have a plan that we're going to set our country onto. And so many of these young men coming back from war, becoming educated, had the opportunity to say, we're going to move forward and we're going to do things. And we see it in our presidents, Richard Nixon, beneficiary of the GI Bill.
Certainly.
John Kennedy, beneficiary. We just have Jimmy Carter. We have a number of presidents who had that opportunity. And when that happened, even Bush, Nixon, let's look at the other side of the aisle. For me, Nixon, Bush, and Ford, got so much out of the GI Bill that in all likelihood, they probably wouldn't have had. Bush may have, because he was from the Eastern elite, Papa Bush.
Oh yeah.
And so, he was a Yaley, the Eli, so he was going to go forward. But I don't know necessarily that Richard Nixon or Gerald Ford would have.
I don't know about Nixon. Certainly, the first President Bush and the second President Bush, they came from great wealth. I mean, George the First there, his father was Prescott Bush, who was a U.S. Senator.
Correct.
That lineage goes back a ways, and yeah, they were a very fine WASP family. There was a great movie out a number of years ago called W about the second President Bush, and it was not a complimentary movie, but there was a scene where an actor playing George the First was talking to George W. And he said, "Now you're out running around drinking too much. You're driving drunk. You're doing cocaine. You're chasing tail. Who do you think you are, a Kennedy?" That's all I remember about the movie, but that's enough.
Yeah, we always have those little asides that what should I say, produce more heat than light.
More heat than light. More heat than light. But you are right about the GI Bill. We have not had its. My son was in Iraq. I took advantage of the GI Bill. I went to Iowa Central on the GI Bill. I went to Buena Vista on the GI Bill. It changed the face of our country. You're absolutely right. And I would not have been able to go to college because I was already well into my 20s. I was a veteran of foreign wars and a married man in my 20s. I don't know if I'd have been, I'm pretty sure I would not have been able to go to college, or at least would have been a lot more difficult without the GI Bill. I don't think my son's generation, and my son was awarded a Purple Heart. That's not an award you want to get. It means you've been wounded in combat.
Right.
But I don't think my son's generation enjoyed the veterans benefits that I did, and frankly, my dad did. My dad was a twice wounded Marine in the Second World War, and the benefits were available for him as well. But,
you see, there was a metamorphosis going on, though, too, Michael. And what was happening was you had the conservative element of the country, and there was a huge push when we got into the late 50s and 60s, 70s, that saw this as really as educational socialism, and they moved.
I know it.
There's no argument about that. I mean, the congressional record is the congressional record is replete with it. And so what they did was we steered this away from a right to, we started steering it into the area of quote unquote grants. And once we started to get into grants, then we started to have liability for payback, as opposed to thinking that universal education is a good thing. And we're back to where we started this conversation. There is a whole element that thinks that universal education is a terrible thing, because it promotes unrest and dissatisfaction with your status in life and a whole variety of things.
Well, I have argued with my Republican friends, and believe me, Tim Kreinbrink is a great human being. Mike Sexton over in Rockwell City is a good man. Certainly Ann Meyer, all Republicans, and none of them want. And I've argued that we should make trade school free to anyone who can get through the course. In other words, 100 years ago, we realized that an educated population was beneficial to our society. So we created K through 12. And that has paid off for us enormously. Now here we are in the year 2022, and we need electricians and plumbers and bricklayers and diesel mechanics and on and on and on. So
couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, that's spot on. And I personally believe that that's something that we need. If I were king for a day, I would couple that with national service, a required national service.
That would be
for both men and women, and preferably I do it right after high school while we're still in the formative years, maybe a year, perhaps 2 years. You and I remember the draft where you had to give 2 years to your country regardless.
Oh yeah.
But I think we could accomplish so many wonderful things. Besides, I mean, things as fundamental as discipline, how to get up in the morning and how to make your cot, how to have to, pay attention to your dietary intake, how to eat, what it means to eat 3 squares a day, and what effect that has on the whole psyche, your spirit, your physique, everything, your intellect. But, it seems like you're, hollering into a drum,
I want to tell you something, Mr. Joe Coleman. I can still to this day spit shine my shoes so you can see your reflection in them.
I hear you, and people understand that you need 2 things for the spit shine. You need brasso for your brass, and you need water and spit and polish for your shoes.
That's absolutely correct. And sometimes in those days, if you didn't have it right, you got your bell rung. You can't do that now, and it's probably a good idea. But yeah, for some back in those days, the drill sergeant wasn't hesitant about bringing you up a little bit. So again, it's just as well those days are gone. That was probably a little bit too much, but
and Mike, when you look into this and when you take a look at it, about 3 million of the soldiers coming back from World War II and Korea took advantage of the GI Bill, but only about less than 70,000 women took advantage of it. And when the GI Bill was passed and amended later on, there was a vast movement afoot to make it have to be locally administered.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, in the representatives, senators and representatives from the Solid South absolutely insisted, if they were going to support the GI Bill, that it had to be locally administered on the local level, could not be administered on a federal governmental level. And as a result of that, Black Americans were essentially left out.
That's right.
Totally left out.
Oh, I'd say so. I didn't know the great fear of the Republican Party, the greatest fear that the Republican Party has. I didn't know this until I met Steve King. Now, it's true the Republican Party is a party of business, and business has every right under our system to organize and advocate for their policies through elected representatives. I don't have any problem with that at all. But the real thing the Republicans are frightened of, and I picked it up from talking with Congressman King over a lot of years, is that they did not want to get the American middle class hooked on programs, because they thought as long as they could keep people striving, as long as they could force people to work as hard as they can for whatever they got, they were going to be all right. The country was going to be all right. But if we lost that, we'd turn into Great Britain or something like that. That's actually a real fear with the Republican Party.
Let me jump on the other side of that issue.
All right.
We have had so many great Republican leaders.
Of course we have.
In the history of our country.
Absolutely.
I mean, we had giants, and we grew up with them. In some respects, Ronald Reagan was a giant. There are a lot of things I disagree with, but he spoke. I think he was a fundamentally decent man.
Oh, no doubt.
And you can look down the line. You were talking about George W. Bush, taking advantage of the GI Bill.
Yes.
I may have mentioned this to you before. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you can see it on YouTube about Papa Bush being fished out of the South Pacific when his fighter went down, when his plane went down, and he's on a submarine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, later on, when he was running for president, there was an element in his campaign that wanted to grab those scenes and used them in political commercials. And
Really?
George W. Bush said, absolutely not. You will not do that. I mean, I was flying over the beaches. I was not a hero. I was above the fray. Those men down on the beaches that were dying and shedding blood, I'm not going to dishonor them by saying that I was some kind of a hero, and consequently, because I was in the service, you should vote for me. And I always thought to myself when I learned of that and looked into his methodology for that, he was an extremely honorable man.
Yes, he was.
For my money.
That generation was a great generation. By the way, I don't know why I thought of this, but Neven Mulholland told me his dad was wingman for Jimmy Stewart when they were in the Air Force, went on bombing runs. I don't know if you knew Jock Mulholland or not, but I did not have the pleasure. Didn't have the pleasure.
John Mulholland was a great guy and affable as the day is long. He could talk to anybody, and you were just as likely to meet John Mulholland walking into the Snell building with his brother Bob to get to Mulholland Realty as you were to see him on the streets of Vail in Colorado during ski season. And I saw especially this thing that we're now seeing with the Webb telescope, and you see there are no words for the immensity, the enormity of the universe. I mean, it's got to be as plain as the nose on your face that there has to be a supernatural, spiritual being the cause of all causes, as Thomas Aquinas would say.
The cause of all
and
causes.
We see it today. You know, everybody says that Einstein was an atheist. I don't believe that, and I don't know that his family would say that he's an atheist, because Einstein himself talked about, when you look at the marvels of the universe, you cannot deny God. I mean, that's one of the famous quotes that's attributed to him. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it's there. It's there, and the problem that I have, and that I think that many people have, is that we are so caught up in the humdrum of our daily lives, trying to exist and to pay attention to things that we might want, that we miss the big picture. And oh, the tragedy of that when we miss the big picture. You know, you were talking about Ayn Rand earlier when she said, you know, if I believed there was a God, I would commit suicide right now to be with my husband. You got to take that a little bit farther. I think what Ayn Rand was also saying is, if I believed that there was a God, because what we are about to move into, i.e. the eternal now, is so fantastic, why am I wasting my time here? I need to get there.
Certainly.
And she obviously was a thinking woman and spent time reflecting upon her own being and the general being of humanity, and consequently you get that, you know.
John, was it Locke? Here, we've decided to live under capitalism as the most moral economic system, and capitalism has its excesses, and we have been told by philosophers down through the ages that, is this Adam Smith or John Locke? I can't remember. But capitalism's excesses will never really happen to us because of the invisible hand. Do you know whose hand the invisible hand is, don't you?
Exactly.
The hand of God. We will never fail as capitalists because of the hand of God. I wonder how many actual capitalists know that today.
Well, and then we get back to what we were talking about here in the beginning, is because we always cherry pick, you know.
Certainly.
We pick the thing that most goes along with the way that we feel, in order to give substance to our feeling, or to prove what we're thinking. But when you look at this, the entire Western philosophical system is built on Aristotle, and I don't care who you are, if you're Kierkegaard or you're Kant or you're Locke, Adam Smith, the question is, where does it begin? And what should we do with where we are now once we learn where it began?
Mm-hmm.
That's why capitalism is, the Catholic Church has always been in favor of capitalism. And you and I have talked about this before. What the Catholic Church diametrically opposes is Darwinian capitalism, the survival of the fittest. And if you can't cut it, you're kicked to the gutter, and
right.
Let's get them in a burial plot, put them out of their misery.
Sometime we'll talk. Maybe we've talked before about Rerum Novarum by Pope Leo, but we should in the future.
Exactly. So, if I could segue for a second, I was thinking while I was on break, I think you could have a spectacular program, Michael, on the heroes that we have had in our community. And while I had that 5 minutes, I was trying to jot down some of the guys who are heroes in our community, and I almost, we were talking about John Mulholland flying for Jimmy Stewart. Well, we had guys in our own courthouse. We had Francis Tierney, who was a judge here, a judicial magistrate, who lost his arm as a waist gunner over Europe.
Mm-hmm.
We had Art Johnson, who was a lawyer, who I think did the full complement of the 25 missions over the Pelosi oil field raid. We had Howard Hamilton, a lawyer here in town, who lost a leg in the same thing. I was thinking Daryl Driscoll's grandpa, who was a dashing South Pacific fighter pilot. His name was Kelleher. Just did spectacular. Grandpa Stitt, south of town, Stitt's Nursery. He was a captain under Patton's Third Army, won the Silver Star as a tank commander.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have all of these guys here at home that I just wish we took the time to say we're surrounded by heroes. We really are. And, I was thinking Stephen Ambrose, who that great American historian who wrote exclusively about, not exclusively, but primarily about World War II, says that a first lieutenant from Iowa, may have been the guy who allowed the Normandy invasion to succeed. And his name was, people from Pella will recognize it, his last name was Vermeer,
Mm-hmm.
the Vermeer Construction Company, Dutch Vermeer. He was one of Bob Ray's, assistants that helped Bob Ray. And, I had the opportunity to meet Dutch a number of times, and I don't know that Dutch ever fully got over D-Day on Normandy. He was in the first wave, and he did it all. And Stephen Ambrose says he took out 2 88s that kept the Americans on Omaha Beach from succeeding. As a kid from Iowa,
Yeah.
21 years old.
Oh, this hits home with me, Joe, because my dad was a Marine, and Mr. Dale Decker was a Marine as well. But my dad was a Marine. I don't think he ever got over Peleliu. The fighting, the Marine Corps, some of the units in the invasion of Peleliu lost 2/3 of their people. 2/3. And then they went from there to Okinawa. Now, those were savage fights. Terrible. We can't even imagine it. And to his dying day, if he started to talk about it, he got kind of dark. And he would talk with me about it after I was a man, because he needed somebody to talk to by that time. But mostly that generation didn't talk at all about these terrible things. Because they were
about it, and we didn't understand them, and what the devil ever happened to PTSD for those guys.
Really. I bring up Mr. Decker's name, Don's father, because I went, a number of years ago when Mr. Decker was still with us, on an honor flight out to Washington, D.C., and I met Mr. Decker, and he told a story about being wounded in an invasion of one of the Pacific Islands, a story much like my father's. And somebody came along with like a crate or something that they had unloaded material with. Anyway, it was something wooden and flat that could float. And Mr. Decker was wounded, and a couple of Marines put him on it, took him to the surf side, and kicked him toward the boats, hoping that he would float back to the ships. Well, they did have smaller boats coming from the bigger ships to round up wounded soldiers, and they picked him up. And he looked at me and he said, "No, I'm not looking for any accolade, because I didn't do anything that all the rest of the fellas didn't do too." And I thought, my God, man, what a story.
Stephen Ambrose gives a little vignette, and we can bring this chapter to a close, about a guy who's sitting there. And I'll try it. It absolutely almost breaks me up. Guy that's sitting there, and the grandson says to him, "Grandpa, were you a hero in the war?" And you know what he responds? He said, "No, I wasn't, but I knew a lot of heroes."
I knew a lot of heroes. That's right. Those men Very young men. My dad went out to war. He was 19 years old. He grew up on a farm in the Laverne area. My God, he didn't know a damn thing. I mean, those men had a deep faith in their country and in the rightness of their cause and in their God. Now, that's because they were educated that way. Even though my father, I don't believe he ever set foot in a college classroom. Maybe he did, but but there were a lot of guys like that. All his friends were veterans. Everybody was in the war in some way. But I really have to think it's a matter of faith. They believed absolutely.
I do too. I do too. And there were a lot of guys that just absolutely were beside themselves. And if we have a few minutes I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Sure.
And because there were guys that stayed home that ate their hearts out till the day that they died.
Mm-hmm.
The one guy I'm thinking of happens to be my father.
Oh.
He was at Iowa State and he was in ROTC and he was ready to go and get his commission and do whatever needed to be done for the country. And he went to his physical and they looked at his legs, which were full of varicose veins.
Oh, really?
And and those are those big veins that are about the size of your index finger that run down both sides of your legs. And they said, "Oh my God, how'd you get this far? You're not going. You're one up. I'm sorry." My dad hated that to the day he died.
Well,
that he couldn't go like all of his buddies.
Mm.
And so what happens is I believe they try to overachieve and overcompensate for things like that.
I have a different philosophy. I hate to interrupt you when you're talking about your father, but I see things in terms of good and evil. I'm definitely an old Catholic in this way. I believe that those men saw evil. They saw a manifestation of evil on earth. And they believed that they had conquered it in some way. And maybe this wasn't a conscious thought that they had, but I think it stirred them in some way that they had seen evil and they had conquered it, and they never wanted to see that sort of evil in this country or the world again. Unfortunately, they did. But I think war is an evil thing. It's a necessary thing at times, but those men saw evil. It was
Mike, you take it. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think there is evidence to underpin exactly what you were saying. From 1945 until 1970, 25 years, a generation. And what do we call that?
Greatest
we
generation.
Call that the golden age of America.
That's right.
The Pax Americana.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was rooted in the sacrifice that those men expended, not only for our nation, but literally for the entire world.
Oh, I think so. By the way, a great chronicle of that period was the late historian William Manchester, ladies and gentlemen. He's been gone many years now, but he wrote extensively about that period. He was a Marine who was wounded in action in the island campaigns, and he could write some very personal memoirs. I personally recommend his memoir. And Goodbye Darkness was the title of his memoir, which I thought was very fitting for all men of that generation. Goodbye Darkness.
And if my memory serves me correct, he also did the quintessential biography on MacArthur.
Oh yes, he did. Yeah.
For people who have mixed messages about MacArthur, I'd suggest that they read Manchester's book on MacArthur, and you will see that MacArthur, of all the generals in World War II, with all of the killing and blood and guts and gore, had the least amount, if my memory serves me correct, had the least amount of casualties. And part of that was attributed to his idea that we would island hop. and cut off the supplies, as opposed to slugging it out island to island to island all the way to Japan.
Well, a lot of Marines like my father criticized him for that. Believe me. Oh yeah, they sent the Marines and left the Army at home. Those little inter-service things. But anyway, Joe, I could talk with you all day, Joe, but we got to go. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. God bless.
And
Take care.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
I'm Connell McShane. This is the Fox Business Report.
The major averages finishing sharply higher to kick off the new month and quarter as Treasury yields ease after a report on U.S. manufacturing came in weaker than expected. A potential sign the Fed may not have to be so aggressive about raising interest rates to tame hot inflation. The Dow up 765 points, the Nasdaq up 240, S&P 500 up 93.